Welcome to another episode of the Sparkles of Gold Astrology Manifesto podcast. My name is Nicolas Polemanakos, aka Sparkles of Gold. Thought I'd throw a little sonic curveball your way as for the intro to this. I have my reasons for that. I'm not going to tell you all the reasons because I like to bring suspense and mystery through your headphones, through your speaker into your world. Because every time I do this, I take it, use it, and create a ritual. Every single podcast, that's my intention. It's ritualistic. If there's one person that I connect to through my words and voice, through sound, and talking about the astrology of the week, one that I reach deep into your core, then I'm making a difference in this world. So thank you for joining on another episode. This week's episode is an interesting one. We're going to do the transits here. I'm doing this on Sunday night, March 12th. We had in the United States, we sprung forward an hour, which drives me nuts. I'm looking outside and the sun was setting. It was 7 o'clock. I'm like, what is going on? Even though it's not like the light's changing, right? And we're coming up to the equinox, but still like that hour thing. I don't know why they should just leave it the way it is. So on and so forth. So that's what I'm doing this podcast. I'm on the West Coast. It's Sunday night. And the moon's in Scorpio, and the moon in Scorpio is it made some connections with the Pisces stuff, the Pisces sun, Neptune in Pisces. And it's been good. But I think the couple days before, when we talk about Friday, March 10th and Saturday, March 11th, were fascinating to me because we had the moon enter Scorpio about 4:05 p.m. on the Friday, the 10th, and then it proceeded to do these interesting aspects during the weekend, along with some other major ones. And I'm kind of recapping here because the moon, it was opposite Uranus and Taurus, the Scorpio moon, so that's a trigger point, and just is because of the eclipse cycle that's been happening in Taurus and Scorpio. And even if we didn't have the nodes there and these eclipses that happen in those signs, the moon and brooding, internalized, protective, obsessive Scorpio opposite the electrical, unpredictable planet Uranus always will set something off in the Taurus Scorpio parts of anybody's chart. So that was going on. Not only did we have that on the 11th on Saturday, but we had Venus making a harmonious, incredible, actually sextile to Mars. So basically Venus in Aries was vibing with that Mars in Gemini. And then like at late Saturday night on the 11th, 10:53 Pacific, Jupiter in Aries was conjunct Chiron in Aries, the wounded healer. This story that's been going on for a while, the past couple of weeks with Jupiter and Venus touching, in Aries. So you have a power-packed weekend with the Scorpio moon in behind it all that's naturally Mars ruled. So, we get into here to the Sunday when I'm doing this, and we have a little bit of a pressure release because of its connection to other water signs, moon being in Scorpio, vibing with the Pisces stuff. But it wasn't easy the last 48 hours. I can go more and more about other stuff that happened last week, but we're going to move forward, and we get to Monday the 13th. Then, we basically 12:20 a.m. It's, late Sunday night, early Monday morning. Moon finally goes into Sagittarius. It's going to do its thing there. And, there's some aspects that happened, like an hour later. The moon in Sagittarius is going to square Saturn in newly entered into the sign of Pisces, the planet Saturn of structure, discipline, pragmatism, rules, and the authority, and having to do the work, and slows things down in the sign of Pisces. And we have now the moon in a mutable sign, and this is going to happen for the next 3 years whenever the moon is in a mutable sign like Sagittarius, where they're going to square off, and that's where we're going to have these moon stories that way. So that happens on the 13th. What I'm really prepping you for is the next 4 days here and after this. So we get into the 14th of March, and basically we're and an interesting thing happens here because at 4:38 p.m. Tuesday, the planet Mars in Gemini is going to be squaring Neptune in Pisces. And this has been an ongoing story for the last 7 months, kind of behind the scenes. This is the third time that we've had Mars square Neptune since last August, because Mars entered the sign of Gemini last August. And usually when Mars goes through a sign, it's pretty quick, a month and a half, that kind of thing goes through a little bit more, 2 months. But because Mars went retrograde in this story, Mars has been in the sign of Gemini. It's going to be for like 7 months. And we're getting to the end of this. So there's been 2 other dates in the past before Mars went backwards in the sky last October in Gemini. And it's at a critical point here because it's at 24 degrees, 25 degrees. Right now I'm looking at my charts on screen while I do this with my notes, just to guide you a little bit. But it's at 25 degrees on Tuesday when it makes a square, and it's done this before. And this is an important point because this is around the time that Mars at this degree area went backwards and started to go backwards last October. So there's a thread and connection here. Now, what does this mean? Mars likes to do, get done, impulse now. In the sign of Gemini, which is the mind, mutable, want to do multiple things and take on multiple things in the mind. And Mars has just been driving force in that sign. Then it's creating a 90-degree angle. I like to use this example on my videos where you picture yourself at a 4-way stop sign and let's just say you're Mars in Gemini, and on the right part, the 90 degrees away from you on the other right-hand part of the side of the stop sign is Neptune and Pisces, and you both decide to press the gas at the same time and go through the intersection. And then you square off, basically, like T-bone each other, right? That's a square. That's a 90-degree angle. So basically, Neptune in Pisces here throws its delusion, illusion, fantasy, and fog. Neptune likes to dissolve boundaries. It likes to permeate things and identify and misidentify things. So here, these Mars and Gemini, which was dealing with the mind process, and then Neptune and Pisces, which brings a creative element when it's flowing, but this fantasy and fog, here's where we can have another situation which seems like misinformation. Now, I think here we must be real, and let me put the backdrop to you here, because not only is these two clashing off, but at 25 degrees, but the sun that day is at 24 degrees Pisces. And at 22 degrees currently that day on March is Mercury in Pisces. And we just had Saturn entered Pisces, which I kind of started with. So we got a lot of Pisces stuff in the sense they're kind of squaring off with this Mars. So what do you do with this? Well, you look to the Gemini part of your chart. You look to the Pisces part of your charts. If you don't know that, by the way, you could always get a hold of me. I'll send you a chart for free. If it's a little too much astro jargon for you, I can help you out with that. But basically, there's a lot of mutable, boundaryless, erratic energy building up to this March Tuesday. And it's continuing that story I told you about since last August. Now, hopefully here, the third time that Mars and Neptune are squaring off here in these two signs, that you have learned a lesson in this place, that after the first 2 times in the retrograde and after 7 months of this, that you have kind of like learned some lessons of like how to work Mars and Neptune together. So once they square off, it's a challenge. What do you do, and what are the lessons learned after the crash, the T-bone crash and the 4-way stop sign? You're going to do it the third time. So you come to the stop sign for the third time. Like, what are you going to do? And do you clash off? Do you do that? Now, mathematically, that's what's happening. But you can say like, oh, I've been here before. I know there are things that are probably communicated and said that are misconstrued, that I maybe thought it was one thing, but I projected another, or someone in conversation or in certain situations that have to do with communication, that certain things were projected onto you in your world and not necessarily true. And they're kind of like not concrete. And so we have to be careful with squares like this. At the same time, we want to look for a solution. For me, we want to bring the creative element of Neptune in Pisces. We want to bring that conduit to the divine that Neptune and Pisces brings, and we want to bring that conduit to the having to initiate, take control of, initiates one will through the sign of Gemini, which deals with communication of the mind, so we can get creative in our process and how we deal with problem solving, how we deal with communication. Okay, it doesn't have to be like half-assed sentences and words, like not speaking the full truth. We want to speak the truth. It doesn't have to come off biting the way Gemini does. It can be softened a little bit about what needs to be said, but still said 100% truthfully, just not caustically. So we could see this happening even here this week, but it's for a long-term story. Try to pick up the lessons here. Again, there's other planets in Pisces here, and it's going to dissolve and go from here to there, and like trying to catch a fish in a river, slipping out of your hands. We want to be smart here and take a patient route with this. That's a lot to say for one day here on March 14th, but that's a biggie. When we get into the 15th on the Wednesday, the moon's going to be in Capricorn. It hits that morning, and then we have more Piscean story. Why? Because at 4:38 p.m., the sun in Pisces is going to then catch up like a degree a day later to that Neptune in Pisces. So we have a continuation story about swimming deep here and the boundaryless waters of Pisces, and where you can go from one part of the water and the other and spread in two different places at once, hence the mutability of Pisces. Dissolve into things. But if you want to take a holistic approach, again, is to bring a compassionate view and compassionate connection in the Pisces part of your chart. Just make sure you have, I like to incorporate with Pisces some Virgo aspects, the opposite sign. You want to have a map and a compass. You want to have a to-do list. You want to have those earthbound little things that gets you through the day so you can steer the river and imagination of your life. Because if you don't have the containers, you don't have the compass and the map, the Piscean thing will just spread out in a million directions and you don't come back to the place you need to. That's why we need a canoe and a raft and the oars and the compass and the map to guide ourselves through the Piscean waters. And we always look for help in astrology with the sign opposite where we can learn. And so we can balance the two, because Pisces will just go out with that faith in the universe, that the universe will take care of me. And that's a beautiful thing about this Wednesday too. The sun and Neptune combining together. The veils are gone. There's conduits to the upper echelons, to whatever your faith is, to the divine, to the core light. And you can find an inspiration in the dream and the vision there. But we always want to come back, because sometimes we go there and it all depends on how we go there. Do we go there through destructive purposes where we disidentify with ourselves and identify with something else and not stay within our own power? Hence, we have the map, the canoe, the oars to help guide us to keep that water contained in like a glass, like that you drink water out of. You could still access the Pisces energy, and it's just concentrated. But I'll tell you, Tuesday and Wednesday, there's a lot of water going in a million different places. So we just want to balance it with some Virgo energy, okay? Yeah, that's happened. Then we get to the 16th on the Thursday. Pisces, the moon is still in Capricorn. It's going to switch over later, but then we have another story. Now Mercury in Pisces finally catches up with that Neptune. You see now how we have 3 straight days of intense Pisces stuff? This, again, now we have Mercury that deals with the word. How you construct, or how you come up with things in your head, how you communicate your ideas, thoughts, and opinions, how you think. It being in Pisces is going to want to think creatively and look at things from a different way and come from an emotional place. And from that emotional place, it filters through Mercury, the planet of communication. And it doesn't mean just talking like I am now. There's different ways that we communicate in this world of how we transmit information. It could be through song, through colors and painting, through dance, through all different types of creative vessels that we use. And so here on the Thursday, Mercury is now, they call it conjunct, cazimi, with the sun. And it goes really, it's the 16th into the 17th on the Friday. I'm skipping things here, but I'm sticking with the 16th because at 10:12 a.m. officially we have Mercury conjunct Neptune. Okay, and then there's so much that happens on Thursday. I kind of jumped ahead to 17, but you could see how, actually, this is a pure example of the Pisces stuff. I just blended a bunch of days together and it kind of lost its form. It just kind of lost its form. It's already happening. You feel me? You see now why we need dates and boundaries in the to-do list to kind of keep it together so we could just kind of maneuver. So again, 10:12 a.m., Mercury in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces. It just did that with the sun before. And then at 12:58 p.m. on Thursday, March 16th Pacific time, we have heavy hitters coming in here. We have Venus squaring Pluto at the last degrees. Pluto currently is at 29 degrees Capricorn, and Venus is at 29 degrees Aries. So we have a cardinal square going on. This is explosive, fire. And then Pluto, about control, obsession. The other part of Pluto, a lot of times, can show what is corrupted and what is poisonous, and unearthing that. And it's going to throw that energy and try to throw that vibe onto that Venus and Aries, that willful way of wanting to be in relationships where I come first. This is where I stand. This is what I need in relationship. And Venus has been getting prepped the whole time about its needs and wounds because it's been just passed over Chiron and Aries, just passed over and dealt with Jupiter, all the stuff I talked about in the beginning of this podcast. And here's a power struggle that happens with Pluto and Capricorn at the final degrees at 29 degrees, with Venus in Aries at 29 degrees. There's something here that's going to get set off. We're back at that four-way stop sign. This time, though, is Pluto and Venus, and Pluto's no joke. So be careful of power struggles. Also, remember to stand in what you believe in for yourself in relationships. It doesn't have to be explosive, but that aspect is explosive. I'll just be real with you. Again, that happens at 12:58 p.m., March 16th. What happens at 3:34 p.m.? Venus then it leaves Aries, leaves that square with Pluto, and enters its home sign of Taurus. Finally gets out of there where it's not completely vibing well traditionally in Aries. Even though I think I'm a more modern guy too, I mix old techniques and new, saying you could work with stuff that supposedly on paper doesn't work well. But, I do this with my clients. I work with my clients this way. I don't want to see people seem like, oh, I'm effed up. I have this in my chart, and traditionally this means that. It's never going to be done right, or it's never going to be good for me. And there's a plethora of that stance on the internet with astrologers and people believing, and they're hearing things that basically stuff they have in their natal charts, if on paper doesn't go well, man, that means they're messed up for the rest of their life. It doesn't mean that way for me, but it might mean like, oh, you have to put a little bit more work and stuff like that. It's not going to flow like other things, but it doesn't mean that you're messed up for the rest of your life, And I could say that because of what happens with Venus here, entering in Taurus within 3 hours. And being at home in its sign of Taurus, you could see how things are always shifting in astrology, how narratives shift, that how planets go through certain places and make certain relationships with other planets for specific reasons. And sometimes you can't see it in the moment, the solutions. And sometimes you put it there, and it isn't until things move into another space where you get perspective. And you also get a sense of home and relief, which Venus does here in the sign of Earth, sign of Taurus, where it's living through our senses, slowing down, tending to our gardens, enjoying the benefits of our hard work and the money and resources that we create, that Venus likes to create, and it happens in Taurus. And then there's the sensuality of Venus and Taurus. Imagine that, moving through your senses and your sensuality, and how it's earthbound and raw and organic and beautiful. Sweet, sweet honey. That's Venus and Taurus. 9:48 p.m. still on the 16th. Mercury then in that sign of Pisces, after what it's done this week, then squares off with that Mars in Gemini, and then we got more scatteredness, more misconstrued words, more dissolving of words, creativeness, the mutability, things getting lost. It's that story still in the background. Thankfully, we have Venus entering Taurus to give us a little bit of Earth to for us to try to relate to, but it's not that, doesn't move that easily. So I'm still on the 16th, and that was at 9:48 p.m. And we are going to go to the 17th. There's other aspects I can talk about. We're going to go to the 17th, which is the Friday. And what a power-packed week already, right? Out of an incredibly power-packed month of astrology. So the 17th now, that's when Mercury, it actually then, after doing its thing, its whole week, does Mars, then it hits what they call Cazimi with the sun at the heart of the sun, and it has this rebirth moment of Mercury in Pisces at this 27-ish, 28 degrees of Pisces. This is another big moment of the week. There is a death and rebirth metaphorically that happens with Hermes the messenger here, and this is the major moment. If you have planets in mutable degrees, mutable means Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces. If you have degrees at like 26, 27, 28, 29 degrees, this is really going to affect you. But there is some sort of death and rebirth process. Mercury goes into the sun, is dissolved to its purest core at the sun. We can't see Mercury in the sky per se because it's behind the sun, or it looks that way. It's like outer conjunction, so you can't see it. But there is metaphorically a dissolving into its purest form only to be reborn. And so here, I think, is a way where if you ritualize this after the whole week of Pisces stuff that we've had and this buildup, where we get to have something that is purified, and your ritual and the way you communicate and the Pisces part of your chart could have a sense of connection to a deeper place within yourself. And one way to ritualize this is, silence and letting things be and be quiet. And what comes through you at those moments, right? And to take note of those moments. And what do you do with that? And you don't have to do anything immediately because we're swimming in Pisces waters, and we just kind of want to swim with the flow. But we're doing it within our mind. So that happens on the 17th. We also have the moon at that point is going to hit that the Capricorn moon is going to hit. And let me see if I can get this straight time-wise. The Cazimi that happens with Mercury and the sun is at 3:44 a.m. And then at 7:13 a.m. Pacific, the moon at 29 degrees Capricorn conjuncts Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. A continuation of the story that happened the day before with 29 degrees Pluto. We talked about this. But just to make a note here, this is the last time for at least 3 to 4 months that the moon in Capricorn is going to make this conjunction with Pluto in Capricorn, because within a week plus from this date, Pluto's going to move and go into the sign of Aquarius. So let's just make note of that, okay? So then at 7:24 a.m., then we have the moon enter Aquarius, okay? So so much this week. 3:25 p.m. in the afternoon, we have Venus sextile Saturn, which means at this point that Venus in the home of Taurus now, where she flows, is making a beautiful relationship sextile where she wants to work together with that Saturn newly entered into Pisces. So now we have Saturn in Pisces pretty much in this sign for almost 3 years. And every time there's going to be a planet that goes into Taurus, remember this, okay? Remember, anytime a planet's going to go into Taurus, at some point, it's going to vibe with the Saturn and Pisces with water. Water and Earth are going to vibe. So remember that, because if things are heavy and you're like Saturn and Pisces, and that means this in my chart, always pay attention when the moon is going to be in Taurus, or like in this case, Venus in Taurus, stuff like that, because it's going to be your go-to oasis place. Okay, so that's huge. We get to the 18th on the Saturday. Now we have Mercury at 8:23. Let me get this right. Yeah, 8:23 p.m. on March 18th Pacific time, Mercury's going to make a great sextile to Pluto now. So now Mercury and Pluto are vibing here. This is good after Pisces stuff this week, right? Got water and earth again. And then within, it's like not even an hour, Mercury then leaves Pisces and goes into the sign of Aries, and now we're going to get hot with our communication and finally moves through that watery stuff. And Mercury's going to play an interesting story here the rest of the month when it touches Chiron and touches Jupiter. So that happens on the 18th. I also want to bring up the 19th on the Sunday. Then we got the moon at 8:11 a.m. Moon goes into the sign of Pisces. The moon's going to make its first conjunction with Saturn in Pisces at 10:27 a.m. Pacific. This is the first time that the moon is starting its story where it's going to make a conjunction every month with Saturn in Pisces. So this is always a thing to make note of. It's a new story with this moon-Saturn conjunction every month. I'm moving ahead here. I'm like, okay, I should be done on the 19th. This is a weekly podcast, but there's a reason why I'm going to talk about the 20th here on the Monday, and it's just to mention that Venus in Taurus is going to connect with the North Node in Taurus. And the North and South Nodes are where we have eclipses. We have eclipses coming in our way in April and May, and then later this year. This moment with Venus at 4 degrees and conjuncting the North Node is at 4 degrees is going to be connected to an eclipse that's going to happen in October of this year. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you on this podcast, but these are the weird things that I like to make note of. Okay, maybe you can make note of it too. So why did I go more than 7 days on this podcast? Well, I wanted to mention the moon being at Pisces at this point because it will be in its balsamic phase, which is the ending of the moon cycle. And with the journey that we've had with all the Pisces stuff just in the last week, and here comes the moon to almost like transverse all the Piscean path that we just did for the last week with Mercury, the Sun, and Neptune, all the stuff that I mentioned. And here comes the moon. Sensitive, quiet, balsamic phase moon, the ending moon, the ending phase of the moon. Why do we say that? Because the next phase after that will be the new moon. So we want to pay attention to balsamic times of wrapping things up, but it's almost kind of a wrapping up of the astrological year. Why? Because when we get to Tuesday the 21st, we have a new moon in Aries, and it's the equinox, spring equinox, fall equinox in the southern hemisphere, and the beginning of the astrological season again, the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere. It's always a big moment. And it's special because it happens at this incredible point they call the Aries point, 0 degrees Aries. And that, my friends, is for the next podcast. I like to keep it like that. Keep a little cliffhanger for you. But remember, when we get to that balsamic Pisces thing at the end there, that several days before Mercury was at the heart of the sun, Mercury went through Neptune. You see how there's this connection to the dream world, to things that are somewhere else to come back to while we need structure. We have multiple hits and chapters in the story within 5 to 6 days that touch upon something profound here. Our connection to life, our connection to each other, our connection to the everything and the nothing. And that moon in Pisces just kind of finishes that up for the springing forward that we are about to do on the Tuesday, which sets off a major week again in astrology with major shifts. We are entering a new era, my friends. So say goodbye to those certain things you know you have to say goodbye to. And that door in front of you that you see that's open, that newly appearing door that you know you cannot avoid and you know you have to walk through, start walking towards it. If you like what I say and do, if you listen to this far, please rate me on your favorite podcast app, share it, anything like that. I would appreciate it. I know some of you have done that already. I know some of you listen every time I do this, and I appreciate you. And I know you're out there. And I like talking directly to you. If you're ever interested in a session or you feel connected to my message and to the way I do things and what you've seen me do on YouTube with my live chart readings and my posts on Instagram, a new newsletter that's about to get sent out, all that, if you find yourself connecting, you feel called for some more insight to some of the challenges you might have in your life, and you're like, what can I do? How can I sail these seas? What is next for me? Get a hold of me on my website, sparklesofgold.com. There's a way to contact me there. You also see what I'm offering. I just added 2 special readings on there. I got a Saturn and Pisces reading just about that. I have a reading I just added just about Pluto and Aquarius, or whatever else you want, in any way that I can help you. I'm totally down. I'm totally here for you. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. I just randomly last night during the Jupiter-Chiron conjunction decided to go live and ramble about all types of things on my mind. It was informal. I had a good time doing it, and a bunch of people came on. Please go over there and check it out. All right? So until next time, you owe it to you to do what you want to do.